Hi, good evening, everyone. I am McKenna Jordan. I'm the owner of Murder by the Book in Houston, Texas. We're sorry we've gotten off to a little bit of a late start tonight. These virtual events and the technical difficulties are the gift that keeps giving. So if anyone's wondering if we're going to be excited to be back to in-store events, I will be back to being in store. But it has been a delight to be able to see so many people on these virtual events, people who haven't been able to be in store, and to talk with authors all over the world. So here we are. We're going to be talking with Sujata Massey in conversation with Aleene Cogdell tonight, who she is a wonderful reviewer and interviewer, and this is going to be a fantastic event. As always, if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments on Facebook or in the live chat on YouTube. And I'll be back on closer to the end of the event to moderate those questions. Don't be shy. No such thing as a dumb question. And we will definitely get to those in a little bit. Before I bring on the authors to interview, I will say that we are all huge fans of Sujata Massey's series, and we're excited about this book, The Bombay Prince. So if you're interested in more information about her books or to order books, I'm putting a link in the comments here on Facebook and on YouTube right now. And again, don't be shy about questions. So as I said, our special guests tonight, Sujata Massey and Aleene Cogdell. Let's start with Sujata. Hi, good to see you.
Oh, it's so nice to see you, McKenna. It seems like just a little while ago I was visiting your store, but in reality, it was years ago.
I know, it's true. Well, you know, you're always welcome, and we'd love to have you back. Maybe next time a new book comes out, we'll get to see you in person. It'd be wonderful. Sorry, my dog has been quiet the whole time we've been.
That dog. That dog.
She's been quiet the whole time we've been behind the scenes, and as soon as it's time for me to introduce, she decides to bark. Okay, so here is your official introduction. Sujata Massey was born in England to parents from India and Germany. Grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota, and lives in Baltimore, Maryland. She was a features reporter for the Baltimore Evening Sun before becoming a full-time novelist. The first Parveen mystery novel, The Widows of Malabar Hill, was an international bestseller and won the Agatha, Macavity, and Mary Higgins Clark Awards. And as I said, your latest book is The Bombay Prince, and I can't wait to hear all about it. We also have Aleene Cogdell. Hi, Aleene.
Hi.
So good to see you again. I always love when you were willing and happy to do one of these events for us. You're such an excellent, informed reader and interviewer, and whose opinion I greatly trust as far as recommendations too. So this is going to be a treat for me to sit back and listen to you chat with Sujata. Let me do your bio really quickly as well. Aleene Cogdell reviews mystery fiction for Publishers Weekly, Shelf Awareness, Mystery Scene Magazine, and the Sun Sentinel in Fort Lauderdale / Tribune Publishing Wire. She was honored with the 2013 Raven Award from the Mystery Writers of America, the 1999 Ellen Nair Award by the American Crime Writers League, and the 1997 Sun Sentinel's Pettijohn Award. Aleene is a judge for the 2019, 2020, and 2021 LA Times Book Prize in the Mystery Thriller category. And I think you also perhaps did the profile of Sujata in Mystery Scene. Is that right?
I did indeed.
Yes, excellent. So I'm going to put a link to Mystery Scene Magazine, which we are all big fans of at Murder by the Book. I'll put a link in there to that shortly.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It is my pleasure. Okay. I'm going to go away. Y'all have fun. I'll be back on in a little bit.
Bye.
Bye.
It says battery low and it just logged me off.
Oh.
All right. I'm coming back. Okay. I'm going to remove Aleene for just a minute or two and let her come back to us. I'll keep an eye on that. But why don't we get started by you telling us about Bombay Prince in your own words, and a little bit about, for those new viewers, new readers, a little bit about Parveen mystery.
Yeah, okay. Well, I write mystery series that's set in 1920s Bombay, and the heroine is the city's first woman lawyer, and her name is Parveen Mystery. And she's 23 years old. She belongs to a minority religious group called the Parsis. And this group happens to support women entering the professions a little bit earlier than other faith communities in India. So that's why she's a woman lawyer. And she had studied at Oxford. She's come back to work and practice with her father. And the Bombay Prince is the third mystery in the series, though you can start with any of the books. And this is a mystery which is based on a real event when Prince Edward VIII visited Bombay. He visited India for 4 months starting in 1921 through 1922. And, he and the British government thought that he would be warmly welcomed. But what happened is there was a whole lot of controversy and communities saying, we don't want continued British rule. And so then there was strife between the communities that supported British rule, who are largely Christians and some Parsis, and then people who didn't, who were the new followers of Mahatma Gandhi, who happened to be a lawyer there. So there's all that unrest going on. And Parveen tries to help a young woman student who's interested in law and has some questions about student protest. And then she meets an unfortunate end, and Parveen gets involved trying to find out what happened to her.
Excellent. And while we were hearing that description, I think we've got Aleene back. So,
Okay.
Aleene, we've covered what happens in this book, and I'm going to leave it up to you now. I'm going to go away again, but you guys have fun. I'm here if anything else comes up.
Thank you, McKenna. And, as McKenna said, anything can happen on these Zoom things. All of a sudden, anyway, we're back. Hi.
Yeah.
And, Sujata, it's great to speak with you again. We spoke in the spring for the article on Mystery Scene magazine, which the cover there. And I'm delighted to talk with you again. And I also want to thank all the readers that are on with us tonight, because they are so important to us. You were just talking about the book. When the Prince of Wales comes to India, he's greeted with a riot. And that was not common at that time, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, there were riots that occurred occasionally, between different groups. But to have a riot around a government invited official, that was the first time. That was really the first time that there was this big, gigantic mass protest against a British official. And, it was such a complicated situation in India because the British had been in India since the 1600s. And we're in 1920 in my series. That's like just about 25 years from the end of British rule. And nobody knew when it was going to end. Everybody thought it should end now, and it wasn't ending. So it was just an incredibly volatile moment when the prince came. And in actuality, about 50 people died in those riots, and maybe 500 people were injured. Oh, you hear a barker too. I hope someone can help that barker calm down.
That's okay. I'm surprised mine hasn't started to bark yet, so we're all in good company here.
Yeah, well, you know what? We could say the dogs are rioting.
That's right. But as you said, it wasn't 50 people died in that riot, and it went on for a few days, right?
Yeah,
it was over very quickly.
3 days. And one of the things that's interesting is Gandhi was so horrified when it happened because he'd started his own political protest to counteract what was going on with the prince. But people left his protest, which was a nonviolent protest, and became violent. So he was so upset about what happened that he went on a hunger fast. And this was the very first of his hunger fast. Like, he went on hunger fast other times throughout the fight for freedom. But it worked. Like, people were so worried about him. His followers were so worried that they actually stopped. They were looting stores. They were attacking people on the street. And the people that were the objects of, being suspected as being loyal to the crown, they were fighting back too. I don't want to say that they were not fighting back, and they got police assistance. So when I researched this, I was nowhere near what happened on January 6th. But some of the things that happened on January 6th, when you hear about, oh, there was this police collusion or this or that, it really reminded me a lot of the history of what happened in India.
I think that you also show that for a while, any protests against the British rule was very much an elite group. And the riot was more the common working person, correct?
Yes. Yeah, there was a big change. Like in the 19th century, the people that started the freedom movement, including people in my own family, they were academics. They were they were wearing Western clothes while they were arguing for independence. You know, they were, and they often saw it as like, oh, we could just be a dominion. We could be like Australia. We don't have to. We don't hate the British, but we just need to be able to take care of ourselves the way they let Australia do. So, but what happened in the 1920s is Gandhi found a way to connect with the working class. And so when the working class got involved, it was no longer just sitting in parlors and donating gold bracelets to the cause. It was, it was burning Western clothing, and it was running all over the place. So it's like you needed all of India to eventually get freedom, right? You could never just do it if a small amount of people, but it was a really big time, and it was difficult for students. I researched at a college, and I looked at the student magazines from the time period, and I learned that students were expelled for sympathies to the freedom movement or suspicion of being a communist. The British government was really afraid of communism. So there was a lot to work with when I was trying to imagine what it was like to be a student who was protesting.
And I thought that was very interesting because it's very much like things that are happening now. I don't think we think of the 1920s as such a time of unrest, but it certainly was in many countries. And I think that, as you show in the book, this was divided families, almost like the American Civil War did. Some people saw it as a business economic situation. Others saw it as the human situation. And can you talk about a little bit how you show this in terms of Parveen's family?
Yeah, that conflict plays out in her family because they're a legal family. But the roots of the family economically are in construction. And historically, the British invited Parsis who were living in Gujarat and were very well known as shipbuilders to come and help them build Bombay, because Britain got Bombay as a gift from the Portuguese government. And they wanted to fortify it and make it a real colonial place. So the Parsis went, and that they got this preferential treatment, and they wound up being the wealthiest religious community in India, even though the smallest, but the wealthiest. And so Parveen's father knows that the most powerful judges in the government the government of Bombay is run by British people. And so even though he might have some sympathies, he really wants to, keep his reputation as somebody that is professional and not caught up in, these left-wing causes. And his daughter Parveen, who's our heroine, is really very much involved in the freedom movement, but she still wants to work for her father. And then her brother, Parveen's brother, is involved in building the gateway to India, which if anyone has visited Mumbai, they've probably seen this beautiful arch. It's sort of like a gate, right right on the water, close to the Taj Hotel. And that was built to welcome, British royalty and also be a symbol of the city. And I know a lot of people worked on that. So like I said, Rustam is one of the contractors involved, to be a little bit, not to be, take away the credit from somebody else. And so he really has front row seats for when the prince arrives, and he wants the whole family to be there, but Parveen doesn't want to be there.
Now you mentioned, I want to talk about research a little bit later, but you said you went to a university and did a lot of research for Bombay Prince. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Maybe expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I went to a place called Wilson College, which is one of the oldest colleges in the city. It was a missionary. It was started by the church, someone from the Church of Scotland. And from the very beginning, they admitted girls as well as boys.
Wow.
So it was very progressive. And that's the thing about Bombay that's interesting, is that there were a lot more coeducational institutions there than in a place like Calcutta, which was a lot of segregated girls and boys schools. So, this college has existed for a long time. And I went, it's beautiful Bombay Gothic stone building, and it's in a small school. And so I went in and I wanted to use the library, but I found out I had to get the principal's permission. And so I had to sit in the principal's vestibule, when all these people were coming and going, just like I was a kid in trouble. So the kids that were waiting talked to me. And then I thought, oh, is she going to let me? I didn't have any prior appointment. I didn't know anybody. And so I told her who I was and what I was doing. And she said, well, Sujata, you may not know this about me, but even though I'm a principal, my areas of specialty are feminist studies and crime fiction. Yes. So she wrote me a letter and she said, you can use this letter anytime. So then the archive was open, and one of the wonderful things I found was an essay by an anonymous lady student who didn't want to be named. And she was talking about just how the sexism and the guys always staring at them was driving her crazy. And she said, it's just really, really hard to be one of very few people, like me in this school. And it was very hard for her to concentrate on her work because people were always staring and whispering, and she had so much anxiety. And, I took that anxiety into writing about the student Frenny Cuttingmaster, who is a really smart student at the college, who Parveen later meets.
Yeah, as a reader and a critic, I just love your character of Parveen. And a woman attorney practicing in 1920s in India, who knew? I had no idea that women were practicing law at that time. We didn't even have the vote in the United States at that time. What was your inspiration for creating Parveen?
Well, believe it or not, there was a woman practicing law in India in the 1890s. So her name was Cornelia Sarabji, and she had a Parsi father and an Indian tribal mom who had been raised by a British couple. So she was a Christian. And so in the end, her dad became a Christian, but they really had an ethnic Parsi lineage. And he tried to get all his daughters through the University of Bombay. For the first one, he couldn't even get her admitted. Cornelia did get admitted, and she had the highest standing of any of the literature students at the University of Bombay, which meant that you automatically got a scholarship to go to Oxford or Cambridge for further studies. But because she was a woman, the university denied that to her. So this group of ladies, including Florence Nightingale in Britain, got together a scholarship fund so that she could go to school in England. And she went to Oxford. So she studied there. She went back to India, and she fought like mad to find work. She just could not. Nobody wanted to hire her. She did things like she went off. She persuaded the government the British government to let her work as a lady legal agent for them and investigate cases where women were in Porta and suspected of being, abused in some way. And that's a lot like my second book, The Satapur Moonstone, was a situation where the government asks Parveen to go and find out what's going on at a particular palace where nobody has heard from, this Maharani and her little boy for a while, and they don't know what's going on. So that was kind of based on the work she did. So I would say Cornelia Sorabji was a very big inspiration. She started working in the 1890s. And then there was a second woman barrister. Well, the first, Cornelia was a solicitor. The second Indian woman lawyer, Mithan Tata Lam, started working in the 1920s. She's fully Parsi, and she also went to Oxford. And she became really involved in the fight to change the divorce law. And anyone who has read my first book, The Widows of Malabar Hill, will realize that Parveen was trapped by these marriage and divorce laws of her faith, where it's very, very difficult to get a divorce, even in the case of physical abuse. And so Mithan Tata Lam worked very hard. It took her a long time, but she managed to get that code changed. So I would say those two are really my big inspirations for having the courage to believe that, yes, there could be a woman lawyer character.
Well, your books are so authentic. Had you always known about this women lawyers, or did you discover it while doing research or something?
Yeah, I discovered about Cornelia Sorabji probably back in maybe 2007. This is a time that I was working on a standalone book called The Sleeping Dictionary. And that's not exactly a mystery. I like to call it a historic suspense novel. But I just had a folder on what Indian women were doing professionally. So I knew, like, for example, if I heard about an Indian woman doctor, like I saw an article about her, I would just throw it into that file so that I would be able to know, oh yeah, there were a few Indian women doctors, or when did nursing begin and when were there, obstetrics, when did those things happen? Like, I'm just interested in those things. There are certain things that didn't happen till really, really late. Like, there were no Indian women police officers until the early 1970s.
Wow.
So it's very interesting to see that with the professions, you could get going faster than some other jobs, which are traditional male jobs.
But once you heard about this and put it in your folder, as every writer and journalist does, it took you 10 years to bring her to readers, right?
Yeah.
And what was the spurring to launch this series?
Well, I had written my historic suspense novel, which I really enjoyed writing. It came out in 2012, but I missed that. I missed the mystery world. It's hard to explain because there are a lot of aspects of it. I missed having a series with revisited characters. I missed going to mystery bookstores. I missed all the reviews. My goodness, it's a lot easier to get a review if your novel is a mystery than something else, which I don't know people would believe that, but I have found that to be true. So there were a number of reasons that I wanted to go back into mystery. And then it just so happened that I got in a conversation with the Soho Press about it, and I submitted a proposal for the Praveens series. And so they agreed to give it a try. So it did take a long time to get there, but I don't think I could have written these books when I was in my 20s. I just didn't have that kind of like that passion to go back into my family history. Mm-hmm. When I was in my 20s, I was writing a mystery series in Japan, and I lived there and I loved it, and I was very, very here and now. But as I got through my 30s and into my 40s, the here and now was my children. It was my parents. It's who am I? Who are we? And India was very precious to me, and it was a place that I was spending more time and more thought on.
Your first two books won numerous awards on many best of the year lists. Were you surprised at the response, both with awards and with readers' response to this series?
Yes, I was very surprised by it. There wasn't a lot of commercial fiction about India. There's sort of a general belief that a lot of books about India are being published because, one notices an Indian name, but before this, it was a lot of it was literary fiction and social issue fiction. And it's not that my mysteries are full of social issues, but they show just the joy of writing a mystery is you can go into so many worlds. You can have rich people, you can have middle class people, you can have poor people, you can do different faiths. I mean, I'm writing about Jewish Indians in my forthcoming book because there were, and they were in the professions. So you can just go everywhere in books like this, and maybe that's part of why people are enjoying the mysteries, is because they're seeing something they hadn't seen before. Though certainly now there's so much going on. Who would ever have thought that India would become like a mystery hotspot?
What you said, mysteries go across everything. S.J. Roseanne has a novel about Chinese immigrants starting grocery stores in Mississippi. And this was a thing in the 30s and 40s. And who knew? And she shows it so well. While Parveen's profession, of course, is a lawyer, I don't think these are legal thrillers. I think these are more stories about culture and people and society. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah,
maybe I'm wrong.
I agree with you. Like, for me, a legal thriller, I just think with thrillers, you usually see the, whoever the antagonist is pretty early on. And you also, there's a whole lot of stuff in the courtroom, and there's a lot of being able to turn on some kind of thing with law. And, I'm coming from a handicap background because I didn't go to law school, and I'm learning law as I go along in these books. And what I do is I consult with lawyers who are, say, legal historian. There's somebody Mitra Sharafi at the University of Wisconsin School of Law, who's just a scholar on this period. And I talk to her, and I run things by other lawyers, but I'm more interested in a lot of what's going on outside the courtroom. And the reality is that the solicitors were not arguing cases in court. That's what the barristers did. And solicitor is actually a more powerful position. So it's a whole different way of looking at the law. And in some of my books, like the Satapur Moonstone, the whole issue for Parveen is not to have a legal problem. She doesn't want to have a court hearing because she's like run away on a horse with this little princess that she's afraid is going to get killed, or she doesn't want to do those things. So that's a big part of law too. But I feel like I'm learning more and more. And one cool thing is there were a lot of different kinds of courts events. Like, for example, there's the coroner's court, there's police court, there's the high court, there's the marriage and family court. And so far, people who have read the series, they've seen the marriage and family court in book 1, which was The Widows of Malabar Hill, when Parveen has her own situation to try to take care of. And then they've seen a coroner's court in this book, the Bombay Prince. And the one I'm working on right now, I did a bail court scene, And I'm not sure how much else I'm going to do with the scenes, but believe me, there's so much going on outside and so much going on with visits to cells. And there's a lot to do.
As a lawyer, you also show that Parveen has a lot of restrictions on her. She can't be a solo practitioner, right? She has to work with a male member.
Well, she could have her own firm, but no one would go to it. What she cannot do yet is appearance. She can't speak to a judge in the high court because women in Britain weren't allowed to do it. So women in India weren't allowed to do it. But that changes in 1923. And I'm moving very, very slowly. I only do my books about every I go like at a 3-month interval. I don't go like every year because I know how quickly you can age your protagonist if you do that. But she'll get to 1923 and then she'll have to decide, does she want to go back to Oxford to get her diploma? Because now she has to get a diploma. Because when she was studying there, yes, she did the whole course, the whole civil law course, but they didn't give the ladies diplomas. So they could start getting them in 1923.
Wow. And I think you told me once that sometimes employing a woman attorney had ulterior motives, like it was a way to humiliate another attorney.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard that. That if that person, that they were used as a way of just shaming the other side. And I haven't done anything with that yet, but I've definitely heard that was why some people were hired and used.
When you were researching the Bombay Prince, was there anything that really surprised you about the time or India or anything?
Yeah, it was surprising. And I think it was very surprising for Parveen with this whole situation with the riots that the Hindus and Muslims joined together because they had historically that the riots were against each other, but this time they were together. So that was a big surprise for the whole city. The city couldn't imagine that would happen. And of course, you could never have had the whole freedom movement if you didn't have a whole lot of people join together. And so at the end after all this trouble, the Mahatma Gandhi said, the freedom movement is for, Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, Sikh, Jewish, Parsi, Christian unity. So he really didn't want to leave anybody out. So yeah, so we talk about like now we're trying to be inclusive. They had to say, whoa, we were not inclusive. We didn't think, we left out these people when we were talking about the freedom movement, and we're not going to do that anymore.
One of the delights, among many things, of your series is that you show us the food. I get hungry when I read your books, and actually, I had curry for lunch today. Anticipation of this. Can we talk a little bit about? I mean, you're not obviously writing cookbook, culinary novels, but can we tell us a little bit about the food that you describe and how that really kind of shows characters?
Sure. Well, Parveen's community, the Parsis, their faith is Zoroastrianism, which is this really old faith that predates Christianity and Judaism. Mm-hmm. And because they're originally from Persia, they use spices in a slightly different way, in like a little bit more perfumey kind of way. And they also really love meat and eat all different kinds of meat. So in a Parsi household like Praveens, you would have pork, beef, chicken, lamb, fish. You would have all those things, which a lot of other households that those things would be forbidden. Some of those meats would be forbidden. So they have a lot of freedom that way. And then also, especially if they were wealthy, they would have cooks that could do really fantastic cakes and puddings. And so the Mystery family has a Christian, they have a Catholic cook from Goa, and they had stolen him from the Taj Hotel kitchen. So he can make all these really wonderful puddings and cakes. And so I really enjoy that. And so I find it's funny though, I do a lot of breakfast writing. Like there's something about it. Like I just love to have a family breakfast scene. And so I was working on one today and I said, I do this all the time. I've got to vary these meals. Not always breakfast, but I'm a breakfast person. And then there's the tea time, so some of the things that I've done that are in, different, showing character through food is, in a situation where somebody dies, the neighbors bring food just as they do in the United States. But they really eat like a vegetarian diet and stay home and don't go to restaurants. And then when you break your fast after a certain mourning period has passed, you can eat this wonderful curry called dansak, which is a combination of lentils and meat, usually lamb, but it could be chicken. And it's like a very hearty, giving strength kind of meal. So, that's something that we talk about in the Bombay Prince. And I had fun in The Widows of Malabar Hill because Parveen went to afternoon tea at her British friend's house, Alice Hobson Jones, and the mother served it. And it was all these tiny little sandwiches and weight watching kind of things. And, Parveen really doesn't watch her weight. She eats what she wants. And, I don't know. I kind of envision her as somebody with meat on her bones and who loves food. And the irony is she cannot cook.
I loved your series about Ray Shimura. Did I pronounce that correctly? Yeah. I just love that. The Salaryman's Wife still remains one of my favorite books of all time. Oh, yeah, I love that. Will we ever see Ray again?
Well, I don't have an immediate plan with Ray right now, but I never say never. And I think that I feel like I need a little bit of a break. If I had enough of a break, I might try like novella, short story. I think I have to go back to Japan, or at the very least, spend some time in Hawaii with, Japanese friends or people of Japanese heritage again, because once you get away from something, it's really hard to do it right. And it would be inauthentic. Like I was writing Japan of the 1990s and the early 2000s. And it is what I hear now is that there are so many more women in the workforce, but I haven't been to Japan since 2005. So I would have a lot of homework to do. I do really care about the character. I try to leave her in a good place.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. But when a series stops or is put on hiatus or whatever, I love it when the author leaves them in a good place so that we can imagine that their life is going quite well.
Yeah, like there might be another Shimura, or well, actually, whatever her last name is. There might be another one coming.
I've been seeing a kind of an uptick in Indian mysteries. And am I correct in this? I've been seeing a few come up. Nev March did one. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, you're right. Nev March, her book is out and it's great, and she's got another one coming. But what's interesting is she's bringing that book to the United States. And then Abir Mukherjee has been doing his series, which is like two men, one British, one Bengali Indian in Calcutta, same period as me. There are some, I just heard about another one that's going to launch that's set in colonial Bangalore.
Ooh.
So yeah, so I don't know much more about it. I just kind of heard a little rumor about that. I am excited about the things that are set in the present day too, like The Burning by Megha Majumdar. I just downloaded that to listen to as an audiobook. I haven't listened to it yet. And then there was The Gin Patrol on the Purple Line by Deepa Anapara, and that won the Edgar Award for Best First Novel. And so I'm really happy that there are books set in present day India, and that it's not necessary to always have white people in the book too, and I sometimes wonder if part of the reason that, some folks will pick up the book because they know, well, there's going to be a variety of people. There might be someone in there that looks like me, looks like not just an Indian person, but a white person too. And these new books, I don't know how much of an overlap like that there is, but I think it's really good to see India right now through these young voices.
I mean, I love books that take us to a different culture, to a different background, one we're not familiar with, whether it's India or Japan or even Hawaii, as Naomi Harad has done. It just it makes our world richer, I feel. And that was just a statement.
Yeah, well, it's like armchair travel, but it's like very in depth, and you get to see, people are people. Some of the international mysteries and suspense novels I've really enjoyed I loved The Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
think I said it in the right way.
Yeah.
And then also, I love the work of Kwei Corte, who writes about Ghana and other African countries.
I love him too. Yeah.
Yeah, I read Cara Black for France. So I really like it. I can't imagine not traveling. When I get to travel again to another country, I always like to have books about that country to read before I go.
Me too. I do the same thing with American cities. Every time I go to San Francisco, I always try and find a San Francisco mystery that I can review and take with me. What next?
Oh, wow. Well, I am working on a fourth Parveen mystery, and it is set in the city again. And this one is a mystery about women's reproductive rights, believe it or not. Turned out that the leading cause of death for women in early 20th century India was childbirth and other gynecological problems related to it. And then half the babies in the city died before they were born. So there was this horrific, it was like this whole, it was super deadly, giving birth was super deadly. And there were people that were trying to make an impact and help with the situation, just so it wasn't so uncontrolled and so hard. And Parveen gets involved in a situation where on one hand, there's a group of women that are trying to raise funds to start a maternity hospital so the childbirth can be safer. And then she is faced with a young woman who is being charged with having had an abortion. And abortion was illegal, but it was like with all these very complicated laws about it. So she's trying to keep that case out of court, and we'll see what happens with that, and if the women get their hospital.
I can't wait to read that. I'm going to call McKenna back, and I hope we have some questions. There she is.
Hi. We do have at least one question. I mean, we had a couple, but you've already answered them. So Gail was wondering, hi, Gail. Oh, wrong. It's not first question being answered right now. Here we go. Why do you think mysteries are so popular? And I think both of you actually can have an opinion on this, given what you do as well, Aleene. Why don't we start with you, Sujata?
Oh, gosh. Well, I got to think back to why I became interested in mysteries. And I became interested in mysteries at a time in the 1980s when a lot of literary fiction was just very, very closed and very, very small stories and very, very little happening and all about style. And then I could pick up a mystery and there would be this incredible plot. I would want to read from one chapter to another because of the kind of the way that the stories were structured. I just knew there would be an ending that had something exciting happen. And then best of all, if I liked that book, there would probably be another one with the same hero or heroine.
Yeah.
So that's why I like mysteries. What do you think, Aleene?
Well, I started reading mysteries when I was about 9 or 10, and I have never read a Nancy Drew. I have never read a Hardy's Boy. Seriously. My mother had these wonderful old hardbacks, which were like, 35 cents back in the 40s. So I grew up reading Agatha Christie and Rex Stout, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and I just found the stories so involving. But I stopped reading them for a long time because nobody was speaking to me until Sue Grafton, Sarah Paretsky, Marcia Muller. And they were speaking to me as a young woman, independent, with, all these things that were going around in their lives. And that brought me back to mysteries. And I feel that the mystery really is the social novel of today. And whether it is a very light mystery or a hard-boiled or somewhere in between, it is showing people who we are now without hitting them over the head with the social mandate. S.A. Cosby's A Razor Blade Tears, which I know you had him the other night. It's a wonderful book, and it gives us a window about two fathers who are trying to come to terms with the fact that they turn their back on their gay sons who have since been murdered. And how do they come to terms with being a parent, being all the flaws they had, and trying to, rectify their lives? So many of the books I read like that, and like Sujata's, you're showing us a world we need to know about. And I finish one book and I pick up the other.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you, Ellen. We have this really old list of annoying things customers can say in the staff bathroom at work. I think the Rue Morgue bookshop put it together a million years ago, and it's still in the staff bathroom framed. And one of them is, "I want something that's more than a mystery." And that's something we think about all the time, which is that all the books are more than a mystery, like you were saying about Sean's new book, or, whether it's social commentary. I mean, you can't read a Sarah Paretsky book without there being some kind of social commentary there, or, reading about historical India and learning something. So I think it's nice to have that plot element keeping the pages turning, but all the other elements are so often there too. So we do have a couple more questions. So
Can I say one thing? Thing? When people say they don't like mysteries, I tell them you're not reading the right kind of mysteries.
Oh yeah, people come in all the time and they go, where's your architecture section? And we go, it's Murder by the Book. It's a crime fiction store. And they go, oh, I don't read mysteries, but I'll look around. And then they start looking around and they find Kate Atkinson, or they find, I don't know, fill in the blank, Maisie Dobbs, or they find in there like, oh, I didn't realize these were mysteries. And we're like, yeah, they're like, the main character is an investigator. Like, clearly they're mysteries, but people are amazed. Even avid readers who claim they don't read crime fiction, that they actually read crime fiction very often. So it's such a nice broad genre. There's something for everyone. Okay, here is another question. How do you plot the mystery out?
Ooh, I do that in a series of times. So first I start with writing like a rough outline that I share with my editor, and she tells me, yeah, I think this sounds pretty good, or I think you need to have your mystery element come in a little bit stronger, right, earlier. That's usually my problem. And then I start writing it. And then so often I have just kind of, I start with that rough outline, but I'm not the one. There are people that know what they want to happen at the end, and that they've like a really clever thing at the end. And so they work backwards. So that's one way that people do it. It's not how I do it, but usually when I get to the last third of my book, I want to start being very, very tight. And by then, for sure, I know who did it. And I get it into just like much more complicated plotting. And so, for example, last week, I spent like 3 or 4 days just studying what I'd done, just saying, looking at the chapters that I'd written and seeing whether there was enough action or not. Seeing, oh, we need to see Colin Sandringham. We haven't seen him hardly. We've just seen him once for breakfast. You know, knowing me, you have breakfast with him. But it's like I gotta find a couple more ways. These people need to come and play. There's not enough danger. Like I can see that further into the book, but I can't see the whole thing out. I'm not that smart.
Well, I mean, whatever you're doing works. So let's just leave it at that. Okay, we can all answer. Well, the two of you can answer this one. And we'll end with this question because I think it's delightful. What writer, current or past, would you most like to have dinner with? And let's start with you, Aleene.
Oh, boy, that's a tough one. I want to say Laura Lippman, Allison Galen, Megan Abbott, and Sujata. I would like to have dinner with all 4 of you.
Oh, wow.
That would be a lot of fun.
That actually, Aleene, that could probably happen at
It probably could. I think that would be fun.
I know who I want to have a dinner with. Josephine Tay.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
And I think there's going to be a lot of alcohol at that meal probably, but some very interesting
Can I come?
food. Yeah. And it's going to be in London. It's going to be some little place in London. And there's probably going to be some fabulous theater people all around us. Oh, maybe Noelle Coward will be there.
Ooh.
Just who else could be there? You know what? I think that I would really like to know more about her.
Yeah.
Or what about Patricia Highsmith? I'd be afraid. I'd be afraid to eat.
I would be afraid. She'd probably bring a snail and have it go over everybody's meal or something. Because she had pet snails, and these huge ones too.
I'd like to know about her. Well, then, of course, what about Agatha?
I mean,
what happened to Agatha when she disappeared for that fortnight?
Yeah.
Also, Dorothy Parker would be pretty fun. Pretty sure. Yes. But if you could survive the night and keep up with the cocktails. So. All right. Well, I think that does it for the night. We had someone chime in. Josephine Tay would be their choice also. Aleene, I'm with you, although I'd add Alifair Burke into that dinner.
Oh, yeah.
I just got a text from her earlier, and I miss her like crazy. So if I could have her and Laura and Megan Abbott all in a room together, I'd be a happy camper. But anyway, okay. Thank you, ladies, so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
Thanks
my
so
pleasure.
much,
Thank you. Absolutely. Both of you. There's information on ordering books in the links. I've also put in links to a lot of the books that were recommended throughout the talk, and a link to Mystery Scene as well, where you can find Aleene's profile of Sujata Massey.
Yeah. This is as good as a biography. I mean, this is the closest thing I ever have to a biography. So thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to say good evening. I'm going to go pour myself a glass of wine and celebrate that this Monday is done. And I hope you ladies have a wonderful evening as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for being with us.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.